We've got some awesome new pictures of one-handed swords, scythes, armor sets, and even more stuff coming to the Siege of Paris DLC that have been found in the Valhalla game files. Of course, this is all down to Pedder, who's entered the Matrix again for us all, so thanks again, mate. And it also goes without saying, folks, big spoiler alert inbound, this is all very subject to change, but I've got to say, it's all looking very, very convincing, so let's get going. Now, no messing about, let's get straight into the one-handed swords, and I've got 4 here to show you, and what you can actually see here are the images of the user interface icons. So it's essentially the thumbnail for the weapon in-game, and it kind of offers us some good clarity on what it looks like, because if it didn't, you wouldn't actually know what weapon you were going to be choosing. So for reference, Pedder's actually pulled the sickle weapon images from the game data, which is where all of these weapons have recently been uploaded to by Ubisoft. And these swords haven't actually been named directly, but I am told that they have this ambiguous data entry alongside it, noted as expansion 2 sword player. So if this is anything to go by, it does seem that these swords are definitely for us and not an NPC. Now, you also may recognize this sword here, as it actually appears in the Siege of Paris teaser trailer Ubisoft showcased for us. It's got that mystical multicolored glint to it, and I actually reckon this is the Joyeuse, which we've spoken about previously as being the famous sword of Charlemagne, actually used to coronate Frankish kings from the 13th century onwards, and it's actually currently housed in the Louvre in Paris. Now, if you actually look at the hilt of the sword, they do look exactly the same from the trailer to this actual game data image, and also pretty much a like-for-like copy for the actual real sword. And I think the guessing game is pretty much up for this one. It looks super cool, and I want Ubisoft to give it to me right now. Now, additionally, in Abel's other hand, we can actually see an inscription on the sword, and that actually looks like an Ulfbert sword, which we can also see here courtesy of Pedder. So for context, we actually already have an Ulfbert sword in game, the Carolingian two-hander, and this is what a one-hander and a two-hander thumbnail image looks comparatively beside each other, so it's quite clearly different. And just for a little bit of context, Ulfbert swords were the first ever trademark swords that originated from the Rhineland in West Francia. They had that Ulfbert inscription on the blade, and it was a kind of sign of superior quality, and as you can imagine, were very, very expensive in that particular time period. So with that being said, we also do have 2 more swords with a kind of ringed handle, and both of these swords are named in the game files as being player swords and part of the expansion. But some of you may remember that we did speak about a rusty sword and a ring sword in a previous video, so could that subsequently be them? I'm not so sure, it's really hard to say right now, but the one on the left does actually look like a very basic entry weapon comparatively to the blue, and I think it's the rusty sword. Now, as we always say, game data info should be taken with a healthy dose of skepticism, but all these things considered, I've got to say, this is looking pretty good and credible to me, folks. Now, it doesn't stop there, because it's looking more and more likely that we're also going to be picking up a new weapon alongside the one-handed swords, and that's Scythes. I actually reckon that Scythes were originally planned by Ubisoft to be the Siege of Paris DLC new weapon class, just as sickles were for Wrath of the Druids, but after community feedback regarding one-handed swords, we've ended up with 2 for the price of 1 in a way. In any case, Pedder has found the names of 4 Scythes in a previous video, and we've actually got, surprisingly, 4 here. And the same thing goes for these though. They're named as Expansion 2 Scythe Player in the game file, so it does seem that they're intended for us and not NPCs of sorts, but still no names confirmed on each one of these. Saying that though, I think this particular Scythe does look a little bit like the Bloodied Scythe, which has been named in the game files, and that's me just rolling a bit of a guesstimation on there, but it does look to match up quite nicely. And if I was to hazard a guess, it does look like we're going to be running around as a werewolf Grim Reaper in the expansion, folks, so be prepared for that. By the way, if you are enjoying the video so far, consider clicking that notification bell if you'd like to be the first to know when more cool stuff is found, as Pedder is on fire at the moment, and I have no doubt there's going to be lots more to come. Now, it doesn't stop there, because there's 2 more weapon images of interest here. First up, we've got this big boy two-hander sword, which looks quite similar to that St. George's sword we picked up in the River Raids, and because of that, Pedder thinks this may be potentially the River Raid sword reward called St. Gareth Holy Sword, that he also found named in the game files not too long ago. Now, of course, for a little bit more context here, St. Gareth was a member of the Knights of the Round Table, and with this sword looking a little bit similar, I reckon they're going to continue the English knight trend here. Now, it's all about one-handed swords and two-handed swords, but we've actually got an axe here, and if you watch the previous videos, you may be aware that Pedder actually found reference to Rollo's lost axe. Now, this axe isn't directly named as Rollo's lost axe in the game data, but it is called a Daneaxe, so could this actually be Rollo's lost axe. I'm not so sure. Either way, it looks pretty cool, and I would absolutely love to wield this and a one-handed sword in tandem with one another, and I've got big fingers crossed in hoping that the animations would be excellent as a dynamic duo. Now, in our previous video, we chinwagged about armor sets named in the game files, one of them being the Charlemagne set, and well, Peda has managed to rustle up some images of that suspected armor set, and here they all are in a wanna. Now, from first glance, it does look like another reskin of the Thane's armor set with a bit of a recolor, which I don't think is a surprise to any of us, considering this looks like it's going to be in the Helix store. I think though the main addition here is the Charlemagne's crown, which Peda also found and named previously, and I reckon there's going to be some potential transmog options here if you do decide to pull the trigger on this set in the store. We also have the Rooster picture for the Raven skin and the Bear Mount picture for the incoming mount, which I know some of you will be pleased to see, and those Latin inscriptions on that shield we mentioned as well. History code, I know you're going to be interested in this, mate. Well, here it is, and I can see the words Roman Imperial on it, and I know some of you are excellent when it comes to historic imagery and symbols, so if you find anything with a little bit of a deeper meaning in this shield, let us know down below. And for the weapon, we've had many chats around the Durandal sword, which was actually owned by Roland, Charlemagne's champion, and I think this may be the weapon here, but it's not a one-handed sword, but rather another big boy two-hander. Interestingly, this weapon has actually been named as the Joyeuse alongside the Imperial shield we just talked about in the game data as being part of this pack, which I think is quite odd because the Joyeuse is actually the weapon we discussed earlier as being the in-game copy of the real-life sword in the Louvre, and this weapon here does not look like the Joyeuse at all. I mean, it's a two-hander for one. Saying that, I really do hope that the Joyeuse, that being the one-hander, is not part of this Helix pack set, particularly as an iconic one-handed sword such as this one. But you never know with Ubisoft, and I think it's all speculation at this stage, and we're just going to have to wait and see. Now that Jormungandr set, we've got picks for you as well, and Peda is really too good to us at the moment, and here they are. First impressions, well, I think it's pretty good, all things considered, and it is incorporating that snake aspect quite well, as you'd kind of hope, as it is designed around its namesake. And I actually can't tell if it's a reskin or not, to be honest, which I suppose is quite good as a general rule when it comes to these kind of Helix store items. But if it is a reskin, let me know down below. I'm keen to know if this is completely new or if it's kind of incorporating different bits of armor from different sets. Also, it does look like it's going to have a bit of a monster two-hander sword here as well, as the actual hilt and its decoration does take up the majority of the thumbnail image, so it looks like there is a snake wrapped around the blade, which could be pretty sweet if it does pop into Redder for a nice transmog option there. Now, there's still more awesome stuff to show you, but if you have found this video interesting or learned anything new so far, a quick like down below only takes a second, and it would be very kind and very helpful, so thanks very much. Now, sticking on armor sets a little while longer, the Paladin set. We have spoken about it a few times before now, and even though this armor set hasn't been directly named in the game files, Peda does reckon it may be this set he's found, which also may actually look familiar, as it is the armor set Eivor is seen to be wearing quite frequently in the E3 trailer. And the same thing goes for the Reaper armor set here, where the armor set bonus found in the game files restores health on a successful assassination. Not a great bonus, to be honest with you, but this armor set has also been found by Peda, as you can see here, and it also matches up with the stealth orientated footage we actually saw in the same E3 trailer. So even though we're speculating here, I think that's another big tick for this particular armor set. Now, those two cloaks that we previously discussed, the Bellatorres and the Frankish travel cloak, well, it seems that these cloaks are designed for safe traveling in certain areas incognito style, and here they are. Big shout out to Yellowcake, Emmanuel and R3, who dropped some really great insightful comments in the previous video about cloaks in Assassin's Creed 2 that I honestly completely forgot about, so thanks for sharing, folks. And some of you OGs may remember that after you actually unlock the Medici and the Venetian capes, you will be able to actually travel incognito in certain regions. The kind of opposite thing would occur when you wore the Auditore cape, raising Ezio's notoriety to max level wherever you travelled. So you could either be asking for a fight or working in the shadows depending upon the selection of your cape. Well, it looks like these cape mechanics are making a comeback, and I for one are very pleased to hear it. By the way, we actually talk about all of this stuff on our Discord community before I actually release the video, so if you're interested, come say hi. We've got a great set of people here and it would be a pleasure to see you in the lobby. Also, big thanks to Peda. You really are in form at the moment, mate. We're all loving your work, and cheers again from all of us. And that's it for me on this one, folks. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm sure I'll see you in the next video. And of course, coffee's on me.